Hi, welcome back to the BMW i3 DIY channel. Today is the annual maintenance review time, so I wanted to go through the checklist. So really quickly, I won't go through it line by line. There's a separate video on the details, but just to highlight a few things, checking the tire pressures, the brakes, battery status, the whether you've used all the fuel in the wrecks. Just all of the small specific things you need to check throughout the year to make sure that there's nothing that's potentially a trouble problem. Wiper blades, for example, the microfilters. There's a whole bunch of things on the list. I'm not going to go through all of these things today, but I did want to highlight that specifically this is the time to check the engine bay, checking under the car for any type of fluid leaks or any kind of a bearing or other problem that may have gone unnoticed, and then just checking the routine things that you normally would do, like lubricating bearings, lubricating seals, and so forth. So we're going to go through some of those in more detail. I also wanted to mention that if you hang in there till the end, I'll also show you how to reset the service notification that shows up on the main dashboard. So if you need to do that, you can skip to the end if you don't want to go through all of the details in this video. But I think it might be interesting to hang in there and take a look. It's somewhat interesting to see and take a look at. Again, this is all of the things that I've come across over time that needs to be added to the maintenance list. This was originally from a BMW maintenance site itself, but I've since added many things to check based on all the feedback from owners over the years as to what kind of problems they've run into. For example, I just circled around the rear cooling fan for the electronics under the rear seat needing to be checked periodically. The first thing I wanted to go over here was checking all the error codes. So if you have Bimmerlink, if you don't have it, you need to get it, and you can download all of the errors that occurred over the last year and see what it was. I had about 9 resettable errors that were not fatal and could be cleared. Some of them were induced by me with some of the experiments I've been working on. So you definitely want to have the ability to check these out so you know if it's something serious or not. You also want to check if there's any software updates, which you can do on the BMW site, and also if there's any recalls, which you can do on the site, which was listed on the spreadsheet and also in those screenshots. So one of the things that should be checked during the annual maintenance service is the oil and fluid level in the Rex engine if you have a Rex. So you've got to go into the back, pull the covers off, which this is the sound cover and then the metal cover. So I'll go ahead and do that. I won't bore you with that, and we'll continue once I have it off. Okay, so cover is off, and here you can see the electrical component of the engine bay, and here is the Rex component. Here is where you check the oil. Here's where you would put oil in if you're doing an oil change, and here is the coolant level. So we're going to check the coolant and we're going to check the oil level at this point in time. I'm not planning on changing it unless something comes up that I was not expecting. Overall, looks fairly clean in here. I might do a quick cleanup. You need to be careful or actually disengage the high voltage if you're going to clean up around this unit. Real quickly, we'll take a look. Here is the plastic motor mount if you have an older version that can be a problem. Also the inside of the rubber motor mount. There's a little bit of darkness around the edge, but I don't see any rips. So it looks pretty much the same as it did a year ago. And I don't see any signs of cracking of the plastic mount, so I think that looks pretty stable. Let's check this one over here real fast. If I get a shot of it. The motor mount down in there. And where is it? Anyway, I'm not seeing it from the inside here. It's in there somewhere. Oh, I'm sorry. There it is right there. So also looks pretty good. Again, little dark lines around the edge, which I saw last year before I cleaned it as well. So not seeing anything unusual or any tears. So I'm going to go ahead and check the fluid levels next. So we'll take a look at that. So we'll start by checking the oil level. One thing that you need to be worried about is getting any kinds of drips or oil onto the sound deadening. You really want to keep that as clean as possible. So be super aware of dripping any oil just to keep it clean. All I gotta do is pull this guy out and take a look at this. And there's a little hole at the end of this. As you can see, the oil level is quite good. It looks like it's about here. So I'm not seeing any problem with the amount of oil. And if you look at the cleanliness, oil is actually quite clean, which it should be. I think I have less than 30 minutes of runtime on the oil since the last time I changed it. So I'm not seeing any problems with the oil. So I'm going to put that back and go ahead and we'll look at the coolant next. So we've got to open this knob up to check the engine coolant level. So pretty straightforward, just unscrew this guy. It's a little bit tight. Should just come off. There it goes. So you may not be able to see this. We'll have to look down in there. So you can see that the max level ring is showing, which is okay, and the minimum level is not showing. So it looks like we're in pretty good shape. It's about where it should be. Maybe a little bit low, but I don't think I'm going to add any at this point. So that's all you really need to check. Again, I'm just going to do a general cleanup of the area, make sure that dust levels are pretty low, and then close this thing back up. So in the front, there's several fluids you need to check as well. So first of all, you've got to pop off this Velcro held panel. And then on this side, you can see that this is the washer fluid. And if you look down inside, you can actually see it's pretty much full with blue fluid. Also, you want to check to make sure that there is no leaks anywhere, especially through the bottom. The pump is in the bottom. Also, if you look at the battery, you can see the battery contacts and look for any unusual corrosion that you can see back in there. Phone actually helps because you can get kind of down in there to get a pretty good view of what's going on without having to take things apart. So I don't see any battery corrosion either, so pretty good there. So we're going to go to the other side, same story, pop this guy off again. And here you can see that there's, first of all, look for any problems, again, any leaks or anything weird. And if you look down in the bottom, you can actually see the steering coupler. Look for any kind of weird leaks or problems there. And in this case, it looks pretty good, so I'm not too worried. Pretty clean overall. No leaks with the heating unit back in there. There's a pump for the heater. That looks pretty good. Sorry, its contrast is not great. Okay, we'll zoom back out. So we've got 3 containers here that are of importance. The first one is your brake fluid. And if you look carefully, I don't even think I need to take the cap off. The fluid level is, it says max at this point, and you can see that the fluid is actually at that max level, so don't even need to take that apart. We will check it later for the resistivity to see if there's any water in the fluid. The second one is this container, which is the coolant for the battery system. It's separate from the Rex engine. So this is the coolant that cools the battery and the electronic components. And again, I don't even need to take the cap off. You can see the fluid level is about here. So looks like we're in pretty good shape there. And the third one, we will have to take the cap off. This is the coolant for the heater circuit. It goes through the heater element into the heater core inside of the car for warming things up. So just unscrew the cap, take a look, and you look down in there. You can see that it's actually slightly overfilled. It's a little bit over, just a hair over the max. So looking really good. So again, there's a max min indicator inside, so it's pretty straightforward to know that you're okay. The other one's a little bit concerning is, or confusing, let me get this cap back on, is the coolant fluid for the battery loop. And there's no obvious max min indicators that I could see from the front of the container. So maybe you guys can see it, but I can't. But I would say just keep an eye on that one. Probably about on this level is where it should be. You don't want to overfill it because it will expand when it gets warm, so be careful about doing that. So one of the things that we missed on the earlier check was the resistivity of the brake fluid. The brake fluid resistivity is a measure of how much moisture is in the brake fluid, and if there's a lot of water, it can boil if the brakes get really hot and reduce the effectiveness. So we're going to go ahead and check that to see if there's any problem. So what I'm going to do is use a tester here that I got from Amazon, and it has multiple lights on it that go from 0% to 4% of moisture in the brake fluid. So pretty straightforward. So we'll take off the cap and quick look down inside what it looks like. So there's the brake fluid. It's a little screen. Okay, put it back. So go ahead and turn it on. It should, if the battery's working okay, I should get a green light. Go ahead and stick it in the fluid, and I'm still getting basically 0%, so not getting any measurement whatsoever. So the question is this actually working or not? So we'll just wipe it off real quickly with a paper towel. And here's just some tap water that I used in a small container, and we'll see what we get. So I'll turn it on, green light for the battery, and bam, more than 4%. So definitely getting some measurements there. So anyway, based on that, I don't think I need to change the brake fluid this time around, even though it's not really due until next year, based on the condition service, regardless of the condition of the brake fluid. So that's pretty much it. Just put the cap back on, and I think we're good to go until next year at this point. So another check you want to do is turn the wheel hard to the right or left, and you can check a couple things. One is right here is the bladder that protects the rack and pinion steering unit. So make sure that there's no tears or rips in that, otherwise your steering might have problems over time. Check all the bushings, make sure there's no problems with any of the connections or bushings on the connectors. I don't really see anything. One problem I did see here is I have a little bit of a tear in one of these guys right here. So it looks like that's one problem that I have. So we'll go around to the other side and check that. So here's the passenger side, and you can see that since it's turned to the right, that the rubber protector on the steering mechanism is extended. And again, I don't see any major problems on that. Check all the bushings and connectors. Everything looks like it's in pretty good shape, except for the same problem on this side where this shock boot is also has a crack in it. Let's see if I can show it. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe a little bit. Anyway, it's there. So those are the things you want to check up in the front here. And we'll check the brakes and the tire pressure also. So checking the tire tread depth is pretty straightforward, especially if you have a fairly inexpensive gauge. So if you take a look at the tire, and you'll notice that the thickness of the gap on the inner side versus the outside tends to be shallower. So you'll see a difference if you try to measure the tread depth with a gauge in that manner. So just stick it in, push it down until it hits the bottom of the groove, and then you can very easily measure it. I'm going to go in millimeters here. So it looks like I'm at about 6 millimeters tread depth on the front, which is pretty new actually, so no problem. But you will notice that on the inside edge, if you measure it, it's going to be quite a bit less, even though these tires are almost new. So it's only around a little more than just slightly less than 3 millimeters on the inside groove. So if you're checking your tires, make sure you check the grooves in the same place. The rear tires tend to have the same problem where the groove is shallower on the inner edge, and they tend to wear on the inner edge as well, based on the camber of the vehicle. So just be aware of that. Another thing you might want to try is checking your wheel bearings. There was some reports several years ago of some wheel bearing slop. So it's best to jack the car up to check this, but just listen if there's any kind of a bearing or anything loose by pushing it back and forth. And these seem pretty tight. I don't see any problem. So I'm checking the brakes using the camera again. You can look at the backing plate for the brakes versus the brake pad, and the backing plate is about 6 millimeters. So you can see here that it's actually about 10 millimeters on the pad. You can take a picture and then measure it with a ruler to get the ratio, and then just ratio that to the 6 millimeter back plate. Underneath the car, here's the wheel side of the rubber motor mount, and didn't really see anything there as well. Checking underneath the car, there's the motor mount in the center. That looked fine. The oil plug looked fine, no leaks. Just looking around, because I did this with the camera. It's really difficult to get underneath the car, so I just stuck the camera under the car and moved it around. And also no leaks around the oil filter, which looked pretty good. Next is the drive shaft CV joint boots. Those have been known to fail if they get too old, and I'm not seeing any kind of a sign. They're filled with grease, so if they are cracked or leaking, you'll see grease coming out of them. So check that was the outboard one, and this is the inboard one towards the engine side, and it also looks fine. And again, I checked both sides. This is the driver's side. Also, I forgot to mention, you need to check the wipers, front and rear. Pretty easy to check. Just make sure that they're still flexible and not cracked. So mine are almost brand new, so I don't expect a problem for another year or two, but don't forget to check those. So we want to check that all the lights are working. So the side lights, if you're in the US, tail lights. Go around to the front. Parking lights on the front. The daytime running lights. So far so good. We'll go back in. We can check the emergency flashers. Looks like everything's working again. I can tell from here in the front, everything's working. And let's see, turn that guy off. Let's see. Headlights, that's pretty obvious. If you're in the car, full lights. Lights are working. Lights are working. You can tell from the pattern. Put the high beam. High beam is working. Turn it off. I'm going to check the brakes. So I'm going to step on the brakes. Again, looks like everything is working. So lights are checked. Don't forget to condition the seals as part of the annual maintenance as well. So you can use whatever conditioner is your choice. Refer to my video on some different options for which one is probably the best. I'll just use this for an example for now. So basically take it, pump a little bit, get some liquid onto the sponge applicator, and go around until you get everything coated pretty well. And just continue to do that for door seals, trunk and front seals, any rubber seal that is around the car. Just a reminder that this was not the entire checklist in the service check spreadsheet, so please refer back to that for the complete activities done during the service if you do it yourself. Also, if you find something that's a problem, you need to take care of it, or schedule a certified mechanic to take care of it. Okay, so we're going to reset the service notification. So let me go ahead and press the start button with my foot not on the brake. So I'll turn the car on. You can see it says service required. I'm charging right now, so ignore that. So I'm going to hold down the button on the side. There's my hand for a few seconds, see what happens. It says reset possible. So I want to hold that down again to reset it. It says reset, push it again. Let's see. So I hold down the button, try this one more time. If I want to reset it, I'm going to hold it down. I think it's for 2 seconds. There it goes. And reset successful. So now, if I turn it off, turn it back on again. It says next service is in July of next year. And I go over to the service requirement details on the center screen. It says brakes okay and vehicle check is okay. Next vehicle check due after specified distance or date. So that's how you do it.